Hello and welcome to the first edition of Parker's Picks, powered by The Hammer. This is the show where I'm going to talk about betting lines and matchups using data and analytics to help us find an edge. The first game I want to talk about this week, this episode, is Missouri at Kansas State. We've got a little SEC on Big 12 matchup here. The Missouri Tigers are heading to Manhattan. Depending on where you're looking, I've seen this line anywhere from 8 to 8.5, 9 earlier in the week, and it's moving fast. And I want to talk through some of the stats, want to talk through some of the matchups here to better understand the nuances of how these teams compare to each other, how these teams match up, and how we might make a decision about where to get the edge. So I have this as about a 72% win probability for Kansas State, 28 for Missouri. Looking at projected points, again, this just says a team with this historical profile compared to a team with a opponent's historical profile. How do they match up against each other? What can we reasonably expect? We can expect about 36 to 27, 36 to 28. So right in there, that 8.5 line seems right about on pace here. What I want to do is talk through each team's strength and weaknesses using these advanced stats, and then I'll talk a little bit about why you would bet one way or the other in this game. So first off, looking at EPA margin. Remember, EPA is expected points added. What that does is takes yards to points in context. Getting 3 yards on 1st and 10 is bad. Getting 3 yards on 3rd and 3 is good. EPA just helps us understand where those yards are in context for a little bit more of a better understanding here. So when we're betting, obviously we want to look at the efficiency, the kind of predictive, forward-thinking aspects of college football success that are going to replicate as teams play multiple games. Football is a game full of variance, and so EPA is one way you can kind of pull out and say, how efficient were you? How looking in a forward-thinking sense, how efficient have you played to better understand how efficient you are? So Missouri is 105th in EPA margin. That's just general efficiency. Kansas was 45th at 0.045, so almost a full tenth of a point of difference between these two. That's a pretty big difference. These numbers are not opponent adjusted explicitly, but Missouri and Kansas State did play similar schedules. If you opponent adjust them, they'll be a little bit closer, but very clearly Kansas State is the more efficient team. On offense, Missouri was 89th compared to Kansas State's defense at 73rd. And on defense, Missouri was 105th compared to Kansas State's 31st overall offense. So we see a matchup here that's really trending towards Kansas's explosiveness on offense is going to be a problem for Missouri's defense. And Kansas, should they improve on defense a little bit, should be quite a problem for Missouri's offense here, Kansas State rather. So when I break down these matchups, I want to look a little bit deeper than just offensive efficiency. College football is a game of style, of variation. And we want to look at how the different teams compare to each other in a matchup sense. And so I like to look at run-pass splits and how often you run. So comparing Missouri's offense to Kansas State's defense, I see that Missouri ran 51.1% more than the average team last season. That was 65th, so right in the middle. Not a huge run-pass split there. Sometimes you'll see really big outliers like the air raid teams will be really, really high or really, really low in rush rate over expected. And sometimes the triple option teams, maybe some of the more old school teams, will be a lot higher in that rush rate over expected. So that's just a measure of style that helps me say, all right, they're pretty balanced. And looking at their efficiency on offense, they were 84th in EPA per pass, 81st in EPA per rush. Both of those numbers are slightly negative, just below 0. That tells me that Missouri did not have a very strong identity last season, and projecting that forward is going to have to figure out, where do they want to move the ball? How do they want to move the ball? The data on this graphic, I should say, takes into account all of last season, takes into account recent history for each team, and it takes into account the new information from the games this year. It'll phase out very, very quickly, and we'll have data just this season, but every model has to start somewhere, and so we have some priors here. So Missouri, not a very good split run versus pass. Kansas State, very bad against the pass last season, 100th in EPA per pass. Very good against the rush, 38th overall. Stopping the rush against teams is really, really important. But when you see a really dramatic shift like this a split of 100th in EPA per pass and 38th in EPA per rush, you have to think selection. And teams ran against Kansas more than they ran against their other opponents on average. Less. Teams ran less against Kansas State than they did against their opponents on average. Because that pass defense was so bad, teams really wanted to attack that pass defense, and the only time they were rushing was in short yardage, obvious situations, or when they had a lead, which leads Kansas State's efficiency to be a little bit higher on rushing, even though in reality, it's probably not that much better than the pass game. One stat I think is really important is kind of opportunity creation. I measure that by echo rate. Echo rate just refers to the rate at which you generate a quality possession. Quality possession is first down inside the 40 or a big play touchdown. So Missouri last season, 49.6% of their possessions ended in a quality possession, and they averaged 4.16 points per quality possession. Not very good at all. Kansas State's defense, on the other hand, 100th in allowing echo rate. 55% of their opponent's possessions ended in a quality possession, but Kansas State really played a solid bend but don't break style of defense. They didn't allow a lot of big plays. They made you really, really earn it. And they did a little better at finishing drives, rating 8th overall in the nation, allowing 3.32 points per quality possession, barely better than a field goal. If we look at field position, this also favors Kansas State. That leads me to believe that Kansas State does a little bit better on the intangibles, on the special teams and kind of discipline side of things. They allow opponents to start drives at the 27 compared to Missouri starting drives at their own 28. Then we get to the last kind of, so we go through and we think, let's think about run pass splits. Let's think about drive and possession based metrics. And then let's think about early and late downs, right? Early downs being first and second downs when things are more open, when context dictates less of how a team's going to move the ball. So Missouri, 95th on early downs EPA, 83rd, a little bit better on third and fourth down success. So not a lot of success early downs. They're behind schedule a lot, and then they didn't convert third downs very often. So the percent of first downs on first and second down, how efficient they were at avoiding third down, is high, but that's just because they didn't get a lot of first downs on those third and fourth downs. Flip side, Kansas State, 52nd in early downs EPA. They really stopped people. They really forced people into third downs. You can see from being second in the percent of first downs on first and second down. And they were really, really bad on third and fourth down. That probably goes hand in hand with their passing efficiency. So a number I'm looking at this matchup is, can Missouri translate, minimize their mistakes on first and second down to get into those favorable third and fourth down successes and maybe attack Kansas State's passing defense. That being said, of course, we know that Kansas State probably has 4 NFL guys in their pass defense right now. Linebacker and rusher Khalil Duke. They have Felix at the defensive end, and then they've got two corners that are just really, really good. So I would expect some positive regression from Kansas State's pass defense, not to be such a split there between rush and pass, and a little bit more improvement on third and fourth down success is generally what my model forecasts. That's why I have Kansas State doing a little bit better against Missouri's defense, although 28 points is not exactly a great would not be exactly a great defensive performance. Looking at the other side of the ball, knowing that, again, Missouri on early downs is problematic. Can they do enough to get to favorable third and fourth down success situations? And can they take advantage of Kansas State in those situations? On the flip side, I'm again looking at Kansas State's split between pass and run. Missouri, not an obvious split between EPA pass and EPA rush on defense. They were 87th, allowing just more than 1/10 of a point per pass, and they were really bad against the rush, 0.154. EPA kind of measures efficiency and explosiveness. I say that because Kansas State, 21st in EPA per play in rushing efficiency. And if you look at rushing success rate, they were 14th, allowing or averaging a 46.1% success rate in the rush. Deuce Vaughn is going to be so explosive for Kansas State. He's going to command so much attention in the run game, not to mention they get the transfer Adrian Martinez, who scrambled really, really efficiently at Nebraska last year while he was pressured for 40% of his dropbacks. Those two combined for a really, or will combine for a really, really tough run game. And if Missouri kind of backs themselves into a corner trying to stop the rush, it does look like Kansas State can exploit that pass game with Vaughn himself, but also with some of their other receivers. They were 54th in EPA per pass last season. Kansas State generates quality possessions really well, 36th in the nation compared to Missouri's 101st defense in echo rate. Missouri allowed teams to average 4.68 points per quality possession relative to 4.85 for Kansas State. Everything here I'm seeing is saying in run pass splits, I think Kansas State has the advantage. They're going to rush a whole lot. Last season, one of their issues was for Kansas was pace of play. They're going to play a lot faster, but they're still going to run the ball a whole lot. Last season, they were 93rd in rush rate over expected. They were one of the most rush-heavy teams in the nation. And so that seems to be a problem for Missouri, is going to be stopping Kansas State's rush, stopping the explosive play there. In terms of field position, again, Missouri did a little bit better on defense. But they really, Kansas State, this is where they shined. Over 30 yards on average on their starting field position there, is 13th best in the nation. So Kansas State's going to be good in opportunities in terms of being set up for success. And Kansas State is really good at finishing those opportunities with that, high points per echo. Kansas State doesn't get a lot of their first downs on first and second down. They are kind of a boom and bust offense on early downs. You see that they're 60th in early downs EPA, but they're 13th and third and fourth down success. They were really good at kind of finishing these series and extending series. Missouri, on the other hand, really, really bad at that. 99th in third and fourth down success, and they were 90th in early downs EPA. So using stats, using numbers, what I'm seeing here is that Kansas State is a team that had a really big imbalance on defense last year, specifically in the run-pass splits and specifically from early to late downs. Missouri, not really efficient on offense. My projections think that Missouri should, as they're balanced, should improve a little bit, but Kansas State's kind of flattening out of their imbalances on defense is going to make that a very problematic matchup for Missouri. I'm worried about Missouri's ability to extend drives on third and fourth downs. I'm worried about Missouri having to march the length of the field on a lot of drives because of their bad starting field position. And on the flip side, I think Kansas State's explosiveness in the run game and their potential to finish drives really, really well compared to Missouri's very poor finishing ability on defense and very poor third and fourth down defense. I think all signs here point to a Kansas State bet. When we're looking at kind of the side here and we're looking at the lines, you want to be careful that you account for how fast or slow the game's going to go. These are two teams that ran a lot more than the average team last season. And they're two teams that really want to find a way to set that explosive play up. So I think we could see a lot of drives that are a little bit shorter as both teams try to find that explosive play. So that comes in a little bit to pacing. That's why this is 30 to 27 is kind of that combination of explosiveness and efficiency together. But I think Kansas State is a good bet here. If you bet Missouri, you're betting that Kansas State's imbalances on defense haven't resolved themselves and that their offense can't be that sustainably explosive again. Missouri's going to have to find a way to get negative plays to really get that Kansas State offense off schedule. And they're going to have to find a way to make sure that Kansas State isn't in these favorable third and fourth down situations so that their conversion ability is a little bit lower. I hope this has been informative. Definitely an analytical way to look at this game. This will be a great matchup and a game that I'm definitely betting on, and I'm hoping that Kansas State's explosiveness on offense really carries them to a nice, comfortable win.